Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, and residents of the Walvis Bay enclave, as we shall call it again. I'd just like to have a brief summary of what transpired in the first year of being on the Walvis Bay Town Council. You might recall that on the date of our election, which was 2020, November, one councillor from the Joint Walvis Bay Residents Association was elected. More by default, but we're there. Now, the whole of 2021 has passed, and then I feel that as far as the Walvis Bay municipality goes, our progress to achieve anything has been very slow, to say the least. I'll give you a short summary, and I hope it will assist everyone who listens to this to see what we are up against. There are complaints, plenty of complaints, and we actually know why people are complaining. But just let me give you a short synopsis of what we're up against. For the past 20 years, there's been a steady decline in the productivity of the employees, which was driven by an absence of work ethic, a performance management system, and abysmal management skills. No person in the establishment takes any responsibility for any of their actions and just passes the buck so that they cannot be singled out for non-performance. Morale, as we know it, is at an all-time low as a result of the above points, and will only change when the whole of the municipality, all departments, is assessed by an outside party to determine the correct way forward and whether every person in the establishment has the correct qualification for the job that they have been entrusted with. My motion on the restructuring has taken from February 21, when I put it in, until September last year, to go out for bids to recruit a capable person to carry out the work as requested. The bids closed on the 7th of January this year, and then they have to be scrutinized by the bid committee before a person is appointed, and hopefully it can start by next month. My motion regarding the 20-cent pay cut will only be discussed at management committee level in this month. And then it must be taken forward, implemented or revised. Now, according to the Labour Act, the salary of employees may not be reduced without the written consent of the employee. We will find out all about that when the motion is discussed at the management committee meeting. It is, however, possible to freeze salaries for a period, which may be the way to go, until the wages, salaries come back into line with the value of the work which is performed. The recognition agreement between the Walvis Bay Municipal Council and NAPWU, the Namibia Public Workers Union, makes provision for retrenchments, which at best is a last resort to cut expenditure on the staff remuneration. Employees may be moved to other departments if found necessary to avoid retrenchments and improve efficiency. We'll have to wait and see what the restructuring exercise produces. The operating budget will have to be cut to the bone for the municipality to stay solvent, which means that a whole lot of projects which are important will have to be put on hold. As I see things, the budget will have to be revisited and all the nice-to-have items will have to be shelved. And only the important but necessary items will stay and be carried out as far as funds will permit. I'm splitting the rest of this report into relevant departments instead of having one long rambling document. I've made abbreviations of the Department of Finance, the Department of Community and Economic Development, Department of Roads and Building Control, Department of Human Resource and Corporate Services, Department of Water, Waste and Environmental Management, and obviously the Walvis Bay Municipality, Local Authority, Traffic Master Plan, TMP, Management Committee, MC, and Ordinary Council Meeting, OCM. Let's start at housing. Housing for the less fortunate has been a problem in Walvis Bay for the past 40-odd years and has still not been effectively sorted out. The Local Authority Act, which is our Bible, as far as the local councillors go, says that the local authority may construct or acquire dwellings and maintain, sell, or subject to such conditions as may be determined by the local authority council, let dwellings so constructed or acquired. There follows another 1.5 pages of what the council may or may not do, and which we were successfully doing until late 60s, and it then fell away and shacks were allowed to develop, which is what we sit with today. We do not have to build houses for all residents in Walvis Bay. However, it is our moral duty to try and facilitate and manage the building and renting, selling of such units, which we already have on an ongoing basis, to allow every bona fide resident of Walvis Bay to live in a dignified structure, which they can then call home. When we started, we were told of the waiting list for housing, and that was right at the start of our term of office. And we knew that there was major corruption going on with the allocation of these units. We found the Community and Economic Development Department in complete disarray, and there were 3 housing lists in circulation with nobody willing to take responsibility for any one of them. There is only one way to straighten out the mess, and it will take some hard work and dedication to get it off the ground and make it work. The following steps need to be taken to start the ball rolling by the Community and Economic Development Department of the municipality. For the guidance, I would suggest the following modus operandi. First, establish how many housing schemes, build together projects, shack dwellers associations, and national housing enterprises there are, which exist and are currently running in Walvis Bay. Then develop a database of all persons who live in Walvis Bay or who have lived for some time in Walvis Bay and who have a municipal account, who do not have houses, and identify why they do not have houses and whether they actually deserve a house in Walvis Bay by virtue of the fact that they are bona fide residents and ratepayers. Then draw up a list of people who fulfill the criteria of owning a house in Walvis Bay and post it in a conspicuous place for comment and objections. This will allow everybody who thinks they should have a house to be identified and come forward. You identify the ownership of all houses in Walvis Bay, which then have shacks attached to them, and the number of shacks at what rate in NAM dollars are being paid per shack. Then we issue a copy of the section of the Local Authority Act which deals with housing, and the contract section which states that shacks are not allowed to all the house owners who have shacks. We then formulate a penalty amount for each shack attached to a dwelling and give a 3-month grace period before implementation of the penalty amount, which will be added to the rates and taxes of the house until the shacks are removed. We can then use the revolving fund from the sale of the houses which have already been built and build more houses for the people who qualify and are on the list of the database which has already been established, starting at the top. In this way, there will be a continuous flow of houses being added for occupation, and the waiting list should slowly start to diminish. New built houses which are offered to the participants on the housing list will be on the basis that the new occupants will have to pay back the cost of the house to the municipality, as well as the rates and taxes and the water used. The interest on the payback rate must be affordable for the new owners. We move on to another bugbear, which is sewerage. Up until the 1960s, the houses in the town only had outside toilets with steel buckets, and sewerage was serviced by a night soil gang and a tank truck. The buckets were collected on a weekly basis by the gang and emptied into the night soil tank lorry, and then driven to the outskirts of town, where the truck was then emptied into trenches which were dug for that purpose. A start was made in the 60s to install sewage lines and a pump station whereby the raw sewage was pumped directly into the lagoon. This practice was abandoned in the 1970s when the first sewage works was built, and it was then about 2 to 3 kilometers out of town. Presently, it's about 500 meters from the civic center and hopelessly overloaded due to the growth in the population of the town. Naturally, when first built, the materials that were used were a state-of-the-art asbestos pipes, which over the years built up sediments and growth on the inside, which hampered the flow of the sewage. In the early 80s, the main lines were cleaned and lined with a glass fiber lining, which halted the internal growth and gave some improvement to the flow. The sewage plant was also upgraded, but maintenance and the expansion of the number of toilets in the town made it a losing battle. We now have a sewage system which at best barely copes with the flow demand and needs to be treated gently to avoid breakdowns. Factors which have contributed to the current state can be summarized as follows. Where previously a dwelling was built with 1 bathroom and 2 toilets inside with perhaps an outside toilet, the norm is now to subdivide a normal earth and put at least 4 apartments on it, which normally doubles the flow through the same 100 millimeter pipe, which was originally only handling 3 toilets, but is now handling about 8 to 9 toilets, which is a problem. One just has to look at where the hotspots are for the blockages in the system, and you can identify that the normal number of toilets collected to the 1 collector line previously has now doubled, if not trebled, which leads to the inevitable blockages and overflow on the system. 60-year-old pipelines are inadequate both in size and material construction to cope with the demand of the blocks of sophisticated apartments, homes, bed and breakfast, small hotels, which have sprung up all over the town since the original pipes were laid. Residents also abuse the system by throwing all kinds of objects down the toilets, like half bricks, aerosol cans, fish nets, and garbage, and then still expect the 100 millimeter pipe to handle the sewage and get it to the sewage works. We're working on the problem. It's gone out to tender for a new sewage works, but solutions and suggestions. The solution is obvious and it is well in hand, but it's going to take much longer than initially envisaged due to the budget constraints. A new sewage plant is on the cards, but projects of this nature normally take a few years to reach completion before being put into operation to ease the load on the old sewage works. Given that the tender process normally takes about 9 months before being awarded, thanks to the new Procurement Act, which has been enforced, we will be lucky to see the new one in operation by 2026, which is 4 municipal budgets from today. That's the good news. The bad news is that the old pipelines also need enlarging and renewal. And so we're in for a rough ride until then, as they have not even been budgeted for. Proper planning must be done, and an impact assessment must be done on all new developments in existing areas which are limited by the size of the sewage lines. Roads and building control. The condition of our roads and pavements is poor, to say the least. The traffic master plan was drawn up in 2015 at great cost to the municipality, and then it was placed on a shelf in the roads and building control offices until we actually found out about it and asked for it in August of last year. I'm still reading through this 100-odd page document, and already it appears to be history, as most of the predictions contained in the traffic master plan have happened already, and it's too late to change them. The result is that our roads, which were built for a maximum 5 to 10 ton trucks with single axles, are being destroyed by 20 to 30 ton double trailer 36 wheel trucks and trailers with double axles. The pavements suffer the same damage, as turning these large trucks in confined spaces in the CBD is not possible without using the pavement and destroying electrical light poles, distribution boxes, and any other fixed object on a pavement. The Roads and Building Control Department of the Walvis Bay Municipality is responsible for the roads in Walvis Bay. And the Road Fund Administration is responsible for the roads between towns and the major trunk roads leading away from Walvis Bay. We started our term of office in November 20, and in January 21, we had a few showers of rain. That is when we discovered just how fragile and brittle our road infrastructure was in town. We're still fighting a losing battle against potholes, as there is still no control over the movement of heavy vehicles in town, and we might get some more showers when the rains do start. And they did rain. So we got some rain last night, so it's not far off. It has taken the best part of last year to motivate the Roads and Building Control to get our in-house pothole repair gang going. And hopefully we will see more progress in the coming months. The parking of heavy trucks all over town is still a problem, and one which we are trying to stop by developing a designated site in the industrial area which can be used for trucks to stop overnight. I have some solutions and suggestions. The traffic master plan should be revisited, and the recommendations which are contained therein should be evaluated and implemented where possible. The TMP is a living document, and it should be consulted and upgraded on an annual basis. We should address a letter to the Ministry of Works, Transport and Communication and ask the Minister to prohibit heavy trucks on the coastal road forever, and not only in December, January. We addressed a letter to him in October last year, and they diverted the trucks from the coastal road for the Christmas season. I asked the police at the roadblock what the fine would be if the trucks did not adhere to the ruling. They told me that there have not been any fines gazetted, so they can only warn them. However, if a truck is on a road which prohibits a 5-ton load, then it should be getting a fine. We'll have to use the existing traffic master plan, which identify the heavy truck routes and demarcate them so that the heavy trucks stay off the other roads in town and thus protect them from damage. We can impose heavy fines for any trucks over 10-ton axle loading using roads which have not been demarcated for heavy trucks. Potholes fall under maintenance, and we were told by the Ministry of Finance when we handed our budget in that 10% of the operating budget must be set aside for this purpose. I don't think it's ever been done. Heavy vehicles entering Namibia from ships for onward movement to other SADC countries only have a 72-hour grace period after landing to leave the country. However, we now have hundreds of trucks parked all over town waiting for drivers to drive them away out of Namibia within the grace period. We should talk to Namport and tell them that any vehicle landed in Walvis Bay for destination outside Walvis Bay must stay in the port limit until they can be driven over our borders. They have ample space within the port limits, and they should make use of it. Traffic fines, which are imposed in Walvis Bay, all go to the central government at present, and a letter should be addressed to the Minister of Works, Transport and Communication to ask him to change the law to allow the fines collected in Walvis Bay to be used in Walvis Bay to maintain our road infrastructure. We lost a large slice of our income by the establishment of Ilonga Red, and I feel it would only be fair to use the money from the road fines which are collected for road maintenance. Traffic control in town and Langstrand must be improved so that excessive speeding and ignoring the normal traffic rules comes back to normal. Appoint the full complement of traffic officers and give them motorcycles to make them more mobile to carry out the work for which they are appointed. Only the chief traffic officer and his second in command should have motor vehicles. The installation of traffic calming devices and proper barriers in the road surface, instead of wasting paint on white lines to which nobody pays a blind bit of notice, will go a long way to improve all traffic movements in town and Langstrand and improve driving habits as well as cooling tempers during peak traffic hours. A traffic circle at the entrance to Meersig and a proper turn-off into Narraville after the road over rail bridge are two projects which are discussed in the traffic management plan and should be followed up. Sure, more attention must be given to pedestrian crossings, especially at schools and old age homes, which will make for a friendlier town with courteous drivers and safer pedestrians. The building department has to get its act together and start enforcing the cleanup of vacant urban and the dumping of sand and building materials on the pavements. Containers found parked on pavements must have a clearance certificate from the municipality stuck to the container in a conspicuous position, and they need to pay the monthly fee for the use of the pavement. All containers not in compliance must be given a warning with a grace period, and if the rules are not adhered to, they must be removed and the owner must pay the costs of the removal. Public transport is non-existent and the town is left to the mercy of the taxis. I know and agree that taxis are essential to move persons from A to B, but that does not give them the right to hold the town to ransom by flouting all the rules in the book. All licensed taxis must be numbered. A meeting with the local taxi association should be held, and the drawing up of a set of rules for all taxis in Walvis Bay must be drawn up and agreed upon. The implementation of a demerit system for local taxis, whereby points are awarded for traffic transgressions, should be drawn up. And when the points reach a certain number, the taxi license should be revoked for a period, and only by going through the full roadworthy and licensing procedure can the license be reinstated and allow the owner of the taxi to get back on the road. Taxis are vehicles which carry the general public as passengers and should be subjected to a roadworthy test when the annual license falls due. This will save lives and stop the practice of unroadworthy vehicles putting the public lives at risk. Long-distance minibuses should be subjected to a pre-trip inspection of tires, lights, and brakes, which will lessen the chance of a major accident and associated loss of lives. We go on to the waste disposal site, or the rubbish dump, as we all know it. The waste disposal site is a matter of grave concern, as at present there are about 50 squatters living at the site who are living off the rubbish which gets dumped there on a daily basis. The municipality holds a permit to operate the waste disposal site, and if it comes to light that there are people living there and the site is not managed as per the permit conditions, the permit issuing authority are entitled to shut down the site. When we took over on council, there was a German national who had the control of the dump and who promised that he would set up a plant whereby the waste would be compacted and then burnt in a special oven, which would in turn heat up water to make steam, to drive a turbine, to generate electricity, power from waste. The contractor picked up problems with the squatters and would not start construction and put his equipment on site, as the municipality could not guarantee that his equipment would not be damaged, as there was no wall around the site which would keep the squatters out. Matters came to a head when unknown persons set the contractor's front end loader alight in one of the buildings on the site, and it was damaged beyond repair. The contractor promptly packed up and left the site, saying that he had had enough. The site is now under the care of the Water and Waste and Environment Department, and a new contractor has been appointed to bury the incoming waste and look after the site. The squatters have been given notice to vacate the site or face eviction. Parks and gardens. These two fall under the community and economic development, and there is a resolution passed already that they will be outsourced, but that no workers will lose their jobs. We'll have to wait and see how that goes. Going on to our resorts. All our resorts run at a loss. When they were built and developed, Walvis Bay Municipality was flourishing and could afford them. Now they are just a waste of money and a drag on our fiscal resources. The Community and Economic Development is busy with a presentation whereby all resorts will be offered to developers to take over and be run properly, and a contract which allows them to run the resorts with the proviso that they look after the maintenance and pay an affordable lease to the municipality. The municipality will still earn the rates and taxes and the income from the fresh water and sewerage. A non-performance clause will ensure that they are kept up to standard and run properly. News just in is that there were 8 bids received for the restructuring of the municipal departments. That was my motion right at the beginning. The bids must now go to the evaluation committee, who will pass on the results to the procurement department for awarding of the contract. I think it's still a month to go before we see any light on that. And just to end off, I have heard rumors that the union is rather upset because they were not consulted on it. So with that, I hope I've been of some assistance in just letting you know what we're up against. We're going to carry on with a good fight. We've all had a good look at what's been happening, and the decision amongst councillors is that this is the year for action, and we're going to do our best for every single resident in this town. Thanks for listening.